Picture this. It's a profoundly quiet, warm August night back in 1977. Across the globe, most of humanity is fast asleep. But out in a sprawling field in Ohio, this massive structure of steel and wire is wide awake. It's a radio telescope, and it's silently, relentlessly listening to the deep universe. It's not tuned to earthly broadcasts, of course, but to the cosmic static just waiting to catch a whisper in the dark. Throughout the 1970s, astronomers were pointing these giant technological ears toward the heavens, hoping to answer one of our absolute oldest questions. Are we alone? Well, we're going to dive into the exact data of a cold case from that era that has literally baffled astronomers for decades.
So, what if for just 72 seconds humanity actually heard something that did not appear to come from Earth? Now, right out of the gate, I want to be absolutely clear about something. This isn't a science fiction story. This is a real, documented event that went down in 1977. A radio telescope recorded what is now considered one of the most famous unexplained signals in the entire history of SETI, which is the search for extraterrestrial intelligence. And to this day, the whole thing remains a total mystery. So how exactly did scientists capture the signal, and why did it cause such a massive stir in the astronomical community?
Okay, let's dive into this. To really grasp what happened, we need to understand what scientists are actually looking for out there. SETI researchers listen to radio waves from space because, unlike light, radio signals can potentially travel enormous distances through the vacuum of the cosmos without getting blocked by all the dust and gas. But space is incredibly noisy. You've got stars, pulsars, and whole galaxies blasting out natural radio waves all the time. So what scientists are really hunting for is called a technosignature. Basically, that's an unusual radio signal that appears artificial rather than natural, hinting at potential technology. Think of it like walking through a really loud, chaotic forest, right? And then suddenly you hear the precise, rhythmic ringing of a cell phone. You'd know instantly that sound was engineered, not just the wind blowing through the trees.
Now, to find a technosignature, you need some seriously specialized equipment. Enter Ohio State University's Big Ear radio telescope. The Big Ear was not your conventional dish telescope. You know, the kind that looks like a giant satellite TV receiver. Instead, it was this enormous, totally unconventional structure built flat on the ground. We're talking roughly the size of 3 football fields. Because it was so huge, it couldn't exactly be steered to track objects across the sky, so it just relied on the Earth's rotation. As the Earth turned, the Big Ear passively scanned a continuous strip of the sky overhead, listening intently for any unusual radio waves falling onto its massive reflectors.
Let's trace how this all actually unfolded. In the 1970s, SETI observation was really coming into its own. Throughout August of 1977, the Big Ear was just doing its job, continuously scanning the sky as the Earth rotated. But keep in mind, back then, scientists didn't have sleek digital monitors flashing real-time alerts. Data was printed out on literal stacks and stacks of physical paper by a mainframe computer. So on August 15, 1977, an astronomer named Jerry Amon sits down to do the tedious, mind-numbing work of reviewing these computer printouts. He's scanning row after row of numbers, completely expecting to just see the usual low-level background noise of the universe.
Then, boom, his eyes lock onto this incredibly unusual sequence of characters printed straight down a single column. The sequence was 6EQUJ5. Amon immediately recognized that this was not your normal cosmic static. It was an anomaly so striking, so completely out of nowhere, that he grabbed a red pen, circled that exact sequence of characters, and wrote a single word in the margin of the paper: wow. And that simple, spontaneous handwritten reaction is what eventually gave this event its legendary name. But to really get why Amon was so utterly shocked, we have to break down what those letters and numbers actually mean.
And this brilliantly illustrates exactly what was happening behind the scenes. Now, it's really important to know that this sequence isn't some decoded alien word or a secret message. It's actually a measure of volume. Here is how it worked. First, Big Ear records incoming radio waves. Then, the computer measures the signal strength over 12-second intervals and assigns a character to that strength. Numbers 1 through 9 represent your basic low signal intensities. But if the signal got stronger than a 9, the computer switched over to the alphabet: A, B, C, and so on. So look at that U right in the middle of the sequence. That letter U marked an extremely high intensity. We're talking about 30 times louder than the normal background noise of deep space. It was a massive, surging spike of pure radio energy.
Now, what's really interesting about this whole event is the timing. The signal lasted for exactly 72 seconds. And why is that specific number such a big deal? Well, it all comes back to how the Big Ear telescope was built. Because the telescope was bolted to the ground and relied solely on the Earth's rotation, a single point in the deep sky would enter the telescope's listening beam, take exactly 72 seconds to pass all the way across it, and then exit the beam on the other side. So a genuine signal coming from a fixed star system deep in space would start out weak, peak in intensity at exactly 36 seconds when it was dead center in the beam, and then fade away over the next 36 seconds. That 6EQJ5 sequence perfectly, and I mean perfectly, matched the exact expected pattern of a fixed cosmic source.
But the intensity and the duration weren't the only clues that made Jerry Amon write wow. The telescope also recorded the frequency of the signal, which came in right near 1420 megahertz. Now, in the world of radio astronomy, 1420 megahertz is a wildly famous number. It's known as the hydrogen line. Hydrogen is literally the most abundant element in the entire universe, and its characteristic natural radio emission occurs right at approximately 1420 megahertz.
The fact that the signal was detected near that hydrogen line is absolutely vital. Why? Well, for decades, SETI researchers have considered this specific slice of the radio spectrum to be incredibly prime real estate for potential interstellar communication. The logic goes like this. Since hydrogen is the universe's most common element, any advanced civilization studying the cosmos would definitely know about the 1420 megahertz frequency. It's kind of like a universal cosmic watering hole. It's just the most logical place to tune your transmitter if you want someone else in the galaxy to hear you. But I really have to emphasize this. Just because a signal is detected near an interesting frequency, that does absolutely not prove the signal was artificial. But when we put all these pieces together, it builds a highly unusual scientific profile. Let's look at the clues we have. It was a very strong signal. It had incredibly narrow frequency characteristics, meaning it was tightly focused, almost like a laser, rather than spread out across the dial. It sat right near that cosmic watering hole, the hydrogen line. It lasted exactly 72 seconds, which perfectly matches the geometry of observing deep space from Earth. Its origin appeared to be from a patch of the sky near the constellation Sagittarius. And finally, it didn't immediately resemble any ordinary radio interference from Earth. The telescope's design allowed scientists to narrow down the rough neighborhood it came from, even if they couldn't perfectly pinpoint a specific star system with the accuracy we have today.
So if it wasn't just a random burst of Earth-based interference, what on Earth or off Earth could have produced it? We're basically left weighing two primary explanations. On one side, we have the extraterrestrial transmitter hypothesis. If an advanced civilization really wanted to shout across the galaxy and attract attention, a strong narrowband radio transmission near the hydrogen line would theoretically be a brilliant way to do it. The signal had exactly the characteristics scientists look for in an artificial source. On the other side, though, we have the unrecognized natural event hypothesis. Space is vast, and we are constantly discovering new, bizarre astrophysical phenomena. It is entirely possible this was a rare, purely natural cosmic event that we just don't fully understand yet. Because remember, there is absolutely zero evidence confirming an extraterrestrial civilization as the source. There are no coordinates, no alien greetings, and no secret decoded message.
So, the crucial point is the most frustrating detail of this entire story. The signal never repeated. And that is the greatest obstacle we have. In science, for any discovery to be truly confirmed, you have to be able to replicate the observation. After that original detection in 1977, astronomers understandably scrambled to find it again. They pointed much more sensitive telescopes at that exact same patch of sky near Sagittarius. They listened for hours, then days, and eventually years, but they never received a confirmed repeat of that unmistakable wow signal. If it was a genuine extraterrestrial transmitter meant to communicate with other worlds, you'd think we'd be able to detect it again. But it never returned. It was just a one-time flash in the dark. The wow signal lasted for a mere 72 seconds. But those 72 seconds created a scientific mystery that has captivated us for decades. And the strangest part of it all remains that when we actively tried to find it again, it had simply vanished. So I'll leave you with this final thought to ponder. Were we briefly listening to another civilization reaching out across the void of space? Or did the universe just produce a rare natural signal that we still don't understand? The data from that quiet August night is very real, but the true origin of the wow signal remains hidden, somewhere out there in the stars. Welcome back to The Explainer. Today, we're pointing our investigative lens straight at the night sky to unpack one of the most famous mysteries in all of astronomy, the 1977 Big Ear Telescope detection. Now, you've probably seen the flashy headlines, right? But today, we're cutting through all that hype. We're going to systematically break down the actual theories, the failed searches, and the real scientific truth behind it all.
72. For exactly 72 seconds, something truly extraordinary lit up the radio sky. The Big Ear telescope picked it up, and then, just like that, it vanished forever. That one fleeting window is literally the entire basis for a mystery that has completely baffled astronomers for nearly half a century.
So that brings us to the massive question driving our investigation today. If this wasn't an alien message, what on Earth, or rather, what in space, did we actually capture? It's human nature to immediately jump to extraterrestrials, but the scientific method demands a rigorous process of elimination.
Now let's look at why this specific signal made astronomers sit up and pay incredibly close attention. First off, its strength was totally unprecedented. Second, it was narrow band, meaning it was heavily focused on a very specific radio frequency right near the hydrogen line. That's a notoriously quiet part of the radio spectrum, and scientists have long theorized it be the most logical channel for interstellar communication. Plus, the signal moved perfectly with the rotation of the Earth. But, and this is a big but, as compelling as all that sounds, none of these traits independently prove an artificial source.
So what's the holdup? Well, the absolutely crucial missing element here is repetitionability. In science, repetitionability is pretty much everything. Think about it. If an alien transmitter was deliberately targeting Earth, you'd expect to catch it more than once, right? But despite tons of targeted searches over the years, that identical signal was never confirmed a second time.
This brings us to suspect number 1, terrestrial technology.
Could this whole thing just be human-made interference? Let's be real. Earth is completely surrounded by a massive, chaotic web of radio noise. Between our satellites, military radar, and global communication systems, we are a very loud planet. However, researchers actually found the WOW signals surprisingly difficult to just dismiss as ordinary interference. Its highly specific traits simply didn't match up with known terrestrial tech back in 1977.
It's absolutely vital that we draw a hard line here. Saying we cannot identify the source is a scientifically accurate, factual statement about the WOW signal. But saying we have proven it came from aliens, that is pure fiction. Just because we don't have an earthly explanation doesn't mean we can default to proof of extraterrestrials.
Moving on to suspect number 2, natural space phenomena.
Could the universe itself have somehow produced this anomaly? The cosmos is absolutely packed with powerful natural radio emitters. We're talking pulsars, massive radio galaxies, swirling interstellar gas, and wild, transient astronomical events. Now, the WOW signal's highly specific traits make these natural explanations a pretty challenging fit. But remember, unexplained simply means unexplained. It doesn't automatically mean unnatural. This brings us to a highly debated idea that attempted to explain the anomaly naturally, the comet theory. This hypothesis suggests that massive hydrogen clouds surrounding passing comets might actually produce radio emissions right near that hydrogen line we talked about earlier. It was a really fascinating attempt to explain the signal using known celestial mechanics.
But, and we have to stress this, it remains just that, a hypothesis, not a confirmed solution. The astronomical community was quick to point out a major flaw, questioning whether cometary hydrogen could really produce a signal with that specific strength and narrow bandwidth. So it's definitely far from being a universally accepted explanation.
Which naturally leads us to suspect number 3, extraterrestrial intelligence.
Look, scientists cannot completely rule out an alien civilization, but the burden of proof is, well, astronomical. Let's look at the criteria. A repeating signal? Failed. Clear artificial structure? Unconfirmed. Was it independently confirmed by other observatories? Failed. A precise celestial source? Unconfirmed. Unmistakable evidence of intentional communication? Also unconfirmed. When you break it down like that, the WOW signal simply does not provide enough hard evidence to satisfy the incredibly strict standards required for such a monumental claim.
6EQJ5. Okay. If you've done any reading about this mystery, or even just seen it pop up in movies, you've definitely seen this famous string of characters. It's been wildly sensationalized over the years, so let's just go ahead and confront the biggest misconception about it right now.
The truth about 6EQJ5 is entirely mathematical. This sequence literally just represents the changing intensity of the detected signal on the telescope's data printout. That is the whole shebang. There was no hidden alien language decoded, they weren't beaming us a cosmic Wi-Fi password, there were no hidden star coordinates, and absolutely no extraterrestrial information was received. It is just telescope intensity data, pure and simple.
Now let's look at the evolution of SETI.
While the signal wasn't some decoded alien greeting, its impact on science was absolutely profound. Today, astronomers aren't just listening for loud, random radio bursts anymore. They're actively hunting for incredibly complex technosignatures. Improved digital technology has totally transformed this field. Modern telescopes can now examine radio signals with vastly greater precision, searching millions of celestial targets all at once. The real historic legacy of the WOW signal is that it proved how a single, unusual observation can push our technological boundaries to new heights.
And this brings us to the real lesson here: how science actually works in practice. The correct response to an anomaly isn't to just invent an immediate answer because we want one. The methodology is super clear. You observe it, you test it, you try your hardest to reproduce it, you search for alternative explanations, and crucially, you have to remain completely willing to change your conclusion when new evidence appears. Science is actually perfectly comfortable sitting with the unknown while it does the hard work of investigation.
So to directly answer the overarching question of this explainer, did we actually receive an alien message? The objective, strictly scientific answer is that we simply do not know. There is absolutely zero scientific evidence proving that the WOW signal came from an extraterrestrial intelligence.
The reality is, the mystery remains completely unsolved. It still stands as one of the most intriguing, unexplained radio signals humanity has ever detected. That stubborn lack of repetition is the ultimate hurdle, and it's what prevents scientists from confidently identifying its true origin, whether it was natural, human-made, or something else entirely.
Maybe the WOW signal was a whisper from another civilization. Maybe it was a rare event written into the physics of the universe. Or maybe it was something we have not yet learned to recognize. We do not have the answer, and that is precisely why the signal remains so fascinating. Somewhere beyond Earth, the universe is still transmitting. The question is whether we are listening carefully enough to hear the next message. This has been The Explainer. Until next time, keep questioning the unknown.